This Variorm video relies heavily on input from Jim Manzi, so let me tell you a little bit about him. Mr. Manzi is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and founder and chairman of Applied Predictive Technologies, an artificial intelligence software company whose tools are used by dozens of the world's biggest corporations. Prior to founding APT, Manzi was vice president at Mercer Management Consultant, where he directed corporate strategy assignments across an array of industries and businesses. He was previously employed in the Data Networks division of AT&T Labs, where he developed PC-based pattern recognition software. He's written for the New York Post, the Weekly Standard, Slate, The New Atlantis, Cato Unbound, and Culture 11. Manzi holds a BS in mathematics from MIT and was subsequently awarded a Dean's Fellowship to the Wharton School's doctoral program in applied sciences. He serves on numerous corporate and nonprofit boards of directors. This is a very bright guy. In addition to Mr. Manzi, there are contributions from astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, comedian George Carlin, inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil, Elon Musk, who is the CEO of SpaceX, Tesla Motors, and Solar City. In addition, we have sea-level expert John Englander, and finally, Dr. Jim White, an expert on geological sciences and environmental studies. Another group of pretty bright guys.
Carbon dioxide emissions are accelerating. Greenhouse gas levels are unprecedented in human history. The climate system is changing rapidly.
Human beings, by virtue of our conduct, burning sources of carbon, fossil fuels among them, that have been buried for millions of years. We burn them. Carbon previously underground is now in the atmosphere, and that source of carbon makes carbon dioxide. A greenhouse gas is warming the Earth.
So global warming is not this made-up thing. It is definitely the case that as you add CO2, ceteris paribus, you're going to raise temperature. There is a rational caution that we're messing around with a system that, upon which all life depends, that we don't totally understand. And it is clear that we are creating significant change to it. And so there is a risk that we are going to create some unforeseen disaster. Temperature has risen since what's called the pre-industrial period. So certainly since the mid-19th century, temperature has risen. Causally ascribing how much of that is due to the increase in greenhouse gases is a tricky question, I think, and is subject of debate. But it is a fact that temperatures have risen.
It's called the Green New Deal, a platform pushed by some Democrats designed to tackle climate change while stimulating the economy. So, what exactly is it? The latest iteration, the one being championed most notably by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is the one making waves. Some of its aims include transitioning the country away from fossil fuels, decreasing the use of carbon in agriculture, transportation, and infrastructure, and aiming to make the economy carbon-free within 10 years. It also seeks to tackle income inequality through a federal jobs guarantee program that assures a, quote, living wage. Despite support for the creation of a select committee in Congress, Senate Republicans have openly criticized the effort, calling the measure expensive and, quote, impossible to afford.
A key principle of the Green New Deal is that it's too late to incrementally move away from fossil fuels. It has to happen quickly and dramatically. For now, though, the Green New Deal is just asking our leaders to acknowledge the scale of the problems we face.
That resolution will not pass the Senate because there's no way to pay for it.
Destructive, socialist daydream.
Republicans aim to make the Green New Deal a key 2020 campaign issue.
You say Democrats are in a way helping Donald Trump.
Green New Deal is going to be a flashpoint.
Did Democrats give Republicans a huge 2020 gift?
The Republicans see it as a key to victory for them, is it?
The world is on a long-term path of energy decarbonization, like delinking energy from carbon production. And if you look at the amount of wood you have to burn per to support a person at a medieval or post-medieval level, it's an enormous amount of carbon you're releasing, right? It's very carbon intensive. Coal was actually a huge step forward. Then from coal, you get to gasoline and other liquid fuels and to natural gas, et cetera. They're all less carbon intensive. And now we're at alternative energy sources, nuclear, solar, wind, et cetera, that are dramatically less. Let's put that. They're not totally carbon free for lots of complicated reasons, but they're dramatically less carbon intensive. Really, if you look at where emission growth is happening, it's happening where people are, as you described earlier, they're moving up into the industrial middle class. It's China, India, kind of the Eurasian heartland. Like, the United States is not going to direct how China and India develop. They're going to develop the way they develop. I on the margin, maybe we can have some effect, but it's hard to see how we're going to do that. Carbon producing fuels already for various reasons that are way past what could be justified in my view. It's this like fakakta scheme to like have a global carbon tax that you're going to execute for 250 years, right? So
the future lies in our biggest energy source, the sun. But it is inefficient and expensive.
Did a major study of different energy sources for the National Academy of Engineering with Larry Page, and we looked at different scenarios. A number of them, which are already working at some level, can more than meet our energy needs. For example, solar, there's 10,000 times more sunlight that hits the Earth than we need to meet all of our energy needs. We need to capture 1 part in 10,000. That certainly will be feasible within a decade, and the total amount is doubling every 2 years.
Probably, 100 times more energy than we actually need to operate civilization just with solar panels. So we just need to fix the incentive structure of the world to make sure that companies are incented towards sustainable versus unsustainable technology. This is fundamentally the problem.
And I think if you took, I'm randomly picking names here, you took the Sandia Lab, which is a very advanced Department of Energy lab, and you said, look, you have a mission. Like, in the next 10 years, we want you to figure out how to get a actual solar cell on a full cycle basis to be cheaper than coal. I think that would be an incredibly positive thing to do, partially because it'd be great to keep pushing down the cost of a solar cell, and it'd be great to have the U.S. be a more dominant player vis-a-vis China in that industry and so on. But partially, you'd create all this spin-off technology. You'd create a natural magnet for the right kind of people to get involved in that. So you'd create a magnet for immigration into the U.S. of people who are focused on that, or incredibly high, very smart people who are able to add a lot to the country. And I think if you took each of the DOE labs, or several of them, and you assigned them this task, and they were competing with one another, in effect, I think that would be a great thing to do. And it's hard to believe that it would not be wise to invest R&D money into figuring out how to create essentially nuclear energy units that are manufactured rather than custom built each time, which should allow you to drive down unit cost, but also drive up safety and make it easier to regulate it at a more feasible cost.
Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, the magnetic reversal of the poles, hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets and asteroids and meteors, worldwide floods, tidal waves, worldwide fires, erosion, cosmic rays, recurring ice ages, and we think some plastic bags and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference?
Are you going to say, well, then, therefore, it's okay? Fine, but then don't expect to conduct civilizations the way we now do, because all the coastlines would get redrawn and all the coastal cities of the world will be underwater.
The science journal Nature published its most recent analysis and found Antarctica is melting 3 times faster than the rate it did in 2007. And in a 2017 study by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, reported if carbon emissions continue to rise and ice caps continue to melt, sea levels could rise an estimated 8 feet by 2100. Currently, coastlines' high tide flooding levels are 60% greater than they were 20 years ago, according to NOAA. With all this information, coastal cities across the United States are in danger of flooding.
The most important line on this planet is the coastline. We kind of take it for granted. We act as if it's always been there and always will be. And it's understandable, because for all of human recorded history, which goes back about 6,000 years, it hasn't really moved. But things are changing now. We need to adapt to rising sea level. It's now inevitable. We should do all the right energy things to try and slow it. But we need to move our shoreline inland. We need to adapt to the reality that after several thousand years of stability, the shoreline is moving.
When the insurance companies pull out, that's going to be the first real wake-up call to people that, hey, we're not going to be able to handle this.
Just on the coastline alone of the United States are trillions of dollars in assets.
Today, the average subsidy for a coastal mortgage is about $2,400 a year in southern Florida, about $72,000 over the lifetime of the mortgage, going from your pocket to somebody else's pocket if their house is right on the beach.
Those with the biggest megaphones on the right have just kind of acted like have really been pretty irresponsible. What that's meant is that the people opposing them on the left haven't actually had to engage in the real kind of practical debate about what I think ought to be the question that the right is asking, which is, okay, I understand your policy proposal. What does it cost us and what does it get us? Like, that's the question that should be asked.
If you're really telling them the rate of increase to which we only contribute 25% of the world, and we're going to reduce that rate of increase by X% of the 25%.
Yeah, right.
And so we're looking at how do you even sell that politically?
You can't.
So all these really big global politics on energy and fossil fuels and how we will drive our cars, is everybody running in the wrong direction? Will technology solve these problems?
I don't think they're running in the wrong direction, but I think a lot of the concerns that, we're running out of energy and so on are wrong, because they're ignoring the emerging decentralized solutions that ultimately be very low cost, and they're based on information technologies. Solar power is being promoted by nanotechnology, which is a form of information technology, and the costs are coming down dramatically, and the amount is going up exponentially.
But that actually all the stuff, 98% of the stuff we're talking about, carbon tax, reducing emissions, Paris Accord, is all nonsense.
It's sound and light. It's a sound and light show.
And it is.
I think the bumper sticker version, I can describe in more detail, is technology rather than taxes.
So now we can reach some conclusions. Climate change is real and presents a clear and present danger. The Green New Deal is incredibly expensive, politically a non-starter, and dead on arrival. We produce less than a quarter of the world's carbon, so a carbon tax would have little to no effect. Solar energy is clearly the way to go, and we need to invest whatever the hell it takes to drive down the cost. Nuclear energy is another viable option. We need to spend significant R&D resources to make modular nuclear energy. And finally, we need to quit building anywhere near the shoreline and recognize that the shorelines need to be moved inland.